Hey guys, what's up? This is Brian with Bear Cards 34. Today for show and tell number 3, I will be doing my second oldest complete set of NFL football cards, which would be the 1978 Topps. This is a 528 card set. Another thing for me on, kind of a personal collector's note, these were the oldest packs of cards that I ever opened. Now, I did not open them in 1978. That would have been impossible. But I did open them when I was a kid, right around 1987 or 1988. So about 10 years after these cards had been out, my local card shop in Salt Lake City still sold packs of this. And so I would occasionally buy some of these. I wish I had purchased more at the time. But really, as far as the sentimental side of it, these cards bring a lot of memories back from opening up cards back in the day. And so I eventually purchased this set from a couple at a card show in Salt Lake a few years back. This set is still relatively affordable. There are some notable rookies in here. Obviously, Tony Dorsett is the biggest one. But you also have some players like John Stallworth, Joe Klecko, Tom Jackson, Wesley Walker and Stanley Morgan were a couple really good receivers in the late 70s and early to mid 80s. Randy Cross, who's featured here for the 49ers, as well as Reggie Williams, who was, I think he had like a 14-year career for the Bengals, who was also pretty good. Gary Fensick from the Bears as well. Those are all rookie cards from this set. So this is the standard design. It is kind of bland, but I still feel like this is a really good set. There are a lot of Hall of Famers in this. Some of the legends, are featured here. This is the typical front, and then on the back, it was mostly green. Now, one thing that was pretty cool about these was the kind of the getting to know you for each player. So you'll see right here, Randy was a high school state champion at the shot put. So they'll tell a little story, a little info about the player. So anyway, that's an example of a basic card. You also had cards at the beginning of the set like this. They had 1977 highlights. This one is recognizing O.J. Simpson's 10,000 yard total rushing for his career. Now, what's of note that's kind of interesting about these cards is I was taking a look from the 1978 season, and the average salary for players in the NFL at that time was $62,000. And O.J. Simpson was the highest paid player that year. He had a contract that earned him $733,000. Now, this would have been right before he switched over to the San Francisco 49ers. When I was a kid and my brother and I would purchase packs from the older cards, we always referred to them as being 1 year older than they were. So I, growing up, did not refer to the 78 Topps cards as 1978 cards. We referred to them as 1977 cards. And the reason for that was because the stats on the back had the stats for 1977. Cards like this mention 77 highlights, and the pictures potentially would have been taken in the 1977 season. So since this was a decade prior, they were 77 Topps to me for many, many years. So it's kind of, in my brain, I still think of them as 77 Topps. Anyway, that's O.J. Simpson. But just to show you, because of the salaries back then, a lot of players had second jobs, like in the off season. This is a group of a bunch of cards that I noticed that on the backs all mentioned different jobs that they had. Right here, Tom is a high school teacher during the off season. This one right here, Bob, the Bears quarterback, Bob Avellini, worked for a paper company during the off season. Rocky Bleier, Super Bowl champ many times over with the Steelers, worked as an investment banker. This guy, Jeff, worked as a financial consultant during the off-season. Bob Jackson worked at a manufacturing plant during the off-season. Haven Moses of the Broncos worked for a luggage company during the off-season. And this guy right here for the Cowboys, John Fitzgerald, worked as a car salesman. So there we go. Would you You buy a car from that guy? Maybe if you were a Cowboys fan, you definitely would. Probably the best thing about the 1978 Topps set is that my boy, Walter Payton, had 5 cards in the set. Excellent. So one thing, at the end of the set, there's a team card for each team. And it picks random team leaders to display. So this is the Bears team card with Walter Payton leading the way with rushing. There's actually a documentary on YouTube I saw that mentioned that the 1977 season of Walter Payton's arguably was the most impressive season for a running back ever when you take into account what he did with the supporting cast around him. And it was pretty amazing. He ran for well over 1,800 yards, averaged 5.5 yards a carry, had, I think, like 14 or 15 touchdowns rushing. So it was definitely a great season. Also for him, he was one of the 1977 scoring leaders. And he was the 77 rushing leader. And I always really loved this card. This is his base card. Walter Payton All-Pro. And right here, when I mentioned, some of the cards at the beginning featured some highlights, 1977 was the year Walter Payton rushed for then NFL record 275 yards, so there's a card there that commemorates that. So anyway, it was very nice to have so many Payton cards as part of that set. Then we go into, some of the notable cards, so I'll mention this one right here. This is Huff leads Buck to first win. Huff had been on the Bears prior to. Now, the crazy thing about this is that the Buccaneers started off their career 0-26. So think about that as a Buccaneers fan. 26 games in a row that you lose starting off the franchise. And then luckily they did get a win there. I think, who did they play? They played the Saints. So anyway, that was a pretty interesting, card just to kind of see how long it took for the Buccaneers to win there. Here's a notable Hall of Famer, Jack Lambert. Great player, part of the Steelers Super Bowl dynasty, as we all know. So I'm going to just kind of highlight some of the more interesting cards, Hall of Famers, things like that. Tell a little bit about some of these players, just little interesting tidbits. And like I mentioned in my last show and tell when I did the 1975 Topps set, this is before my time, but I do think we can get a lot out of, the hobby by looking back at the past and looking into the history of the players, the teams, the players that came before, the ones that we follow now. And, for those who might be interested in collecting some vintage cards, these can be relatively affordable. This 1978 set, if you go on eBay, you could get this cheaper a lot of times than a box of cards. So just something to consider along the way. Now, look, I get it. I love opening new product and getting autographs, numbered cards, mem cards, all of that. It's so much fun. They've really done a good job with that. But I think it's also nice to kind of take a look back at the older stuff as well. So this is Ken Houston on the Washington Redskins. Ken Houston made it to the Hall of Fame in '86, 3-time All-Pro. I'm not sure if I'll say this name right, Joe Delamielleure. I don't know. Anyway, he is a Hall of Famer as well, back in 2003. 8-time All-Pro, including that year. I'm not sure how to say this name, if any of you out there do. AJ Dewey, not sure. But he that's his rookie card, I believe. He had quite a nice career with the Dolphins as well. Here's Danny White from the Cowboys. At this time, you can see they're punter and quarterback. I mean, that would be a nice thing to have a quarterback who could also punt, save space on your roster for another position. So he was the backup to Roger Staubach at that point, and then went on to lead the Cowboys in the 80s. Right here, near the end of his career, we've got Larry Csonka, obviously most well-known for playing for the Dolphins. He made the Hall of Fame, I think it was 1987. So he played in 1974. He left the Dolphins to play in the World Football League. This is an old school World Football League, and it folded after a couple of years. So when it folded, he moved over to the Giants and finished out his career out there. Right here we have John Hannah, one of the all-time greats. He made the Hall of Fame back in 91. And at the turn of the century, Sporting News ranked him as the number 2 best offensive lineman ever. The only one they put ahead of him was this awesome guy right here, Anthony Munoz. So that, that says a lot for John Hannah. Now, I've mentioned before, I am from Utah. I live in Utah. So I collect any players who played their college ball here. This guy right here, Norm Thompson, played for the University of Utah. What's interesting about this guy is he was in 1977, so just the year prior, he became the first free agent in NFL history to sign a contract with another team. He moved from the Colts over to the Cardinals. So that was pretty interesting there. And the next card that I'll mention here, Bob Johnson. For any diehard Bengals fans out there, you might know who he is. He was the first player ever chosen by the Bengals. He was also the last original Bengal from the first year of the franchise to retire. And his jersey, number 54, is the only jersey number that has ever been retired for the Bengals. So that's pretty cool for him to have that honor. Here's Lyle Alzado. I always just loved watching highlights of him. Just a beast for the Broncos and the Raiders. Right here we have Dave Casper. He's a Hall of Fame tight end for the Raiders. He was a 4-time All-Pro, also a Super Bowl champ. This right here is Archie Griffin. So Archie Griffin is a 2-time Heisman Trophy winner from Ohio State. His NFL career never really translated the same way, but that's super impressive that he had two years in a row in college where he won that Heisman Trophy. A lot of you guys are probably familiar with Randy White. Even nowadays, Panini, I've seen make some updated cards of him the last few years. So he was a Hall of Famer in '94, 9-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champion, co-Super Bowl MVP 1 year, great player. And then here's another major Super Bowl champion, Terry Bradshaw. A lot of us know him now as a Fox analyst. He's been in some movies and TV shows also. He was made the Hall of Fame in '89. He's a 4-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time MVP. I mean, it's super impressive career, major victories, and some great teams that he was a part of. Right here we have Ted Hendricks. This is him in his Raider days. There we go. There he is. Tried to run on us. Hall of Fame '87, 4-time Super Bowl champ, 6-time All-Pro. Again, great player there. And then we have Jim Langer from the Dolphins. He was a Hall of Famer back in '87, 6-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ. And here's Calvin Hill. He was a great player back in the day. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler, and he was also the first Cowboy to ever have 1,000 yards rushing in a season. He's also the father of NBA All-Star Grant Hill. So that is Grant Hill's father right there. And next up, we have Carl Eller. He just looks like a mean guy on the field, doesn't he? So Carl Eller made the Hall of Fame back in 2004. 7-time All-Pro, also the 1971 Defensive Player of the Year. Another Hall of Famer that we have here is Lem Barney. He made the Hall of Fame back in '92. 7-time Pro Bowler. He had 56 interceptions in his career, so he was quite impressive there. Next up, we have Gene Upshaw. Now, I knew Gene Upshaw because I think he was the president of the Players Union up until he died, actually. He was doing that right up until his death. But he's also very well known as a great player, Hall of Famer in '87. And I read that he was the only player in NFL history who has reached a Super Bowl in 3 different decades with the same team. So that's pretty impressive there. Right here we have Harold Jackson. Now, I thought Harold Jackson was in the Hall of Fame. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. He had over 10,000 yards receiving, which when you're playing in the 70s, that's pretty impressive. 10,000 yards is a big deal. But he did not make the Hall of Fame. And what was funny is I read that the Professional Football Researchers Association listed him. He made the 2011 Hall of Very Good. I thought that was pretty hilarious. I would love Panini, even if it's just as a joke, to make a series of subset cards for the Hall of Very Good. That would be awesome. Here we have Harvey Martin, another great Cowboy. He made the 70s All-Decade Team, 4 Pro Bowls, Super Bowl co-MVP with Randy White. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 1977. Unfortunately, he died like almost 20 years ago now. He's only 51 years old at the time. But great player for the Cowboys. Then we have Bob Greasy, Hall of Fame from 1990. He had 3 consecutive Super Bowl appearances. You know, I mean, that's really impressive. But Jim Kelly ended up having 4 Super Bowl appearances. They lost all 4, 0-4. Greasy at least won 2, which is nice. So he was the 71 MVP and a 6-time Pro Bowler. This guy I put on the list only because he's a kicker. It's his rookie card, Ralph Benerschke. I just know him because he was part of he replaced Pat Sajak as the daytime Wheel of Fortune host years ago when I was like a teenager. He only did it, I think, for like a year, but I still remember him from that. So next up we have Ahmad Rashad. Ahmad Rashad, and you know they actually show it here on the back of his card. Ahmad was formerly known as Bobby Moore. So then he changed his name, became host of NBA Inside Stuff. I think that's what it was called. Yeah. So anyway, Ahmad Rashad was a great player, 4-time Pro Bowler. He's named as one of the 50 greatest Vikings of all time. Then we have ELVIN BETHEA, made the Hall of Fame in 2003, 5-time All-Pro. His jersey number 65 was retired by the Oilers. And then we have one of my favorites, Jim Plunkett. So Jim Plunkett, he ties a record for a 99-yard touchdown pass. He won the Heisman in 1970. He was the NFL Comeback Player of the Year in 1980. He had done okay with the Patriots, went to the 49ers, didn't do so hot, ended up with the Raiders, and then resurrected his career. In fact, he was, I think, cut by the Niners. So the Raiders signed him as a backup, and then he went on to win a couple Super Bowls, one as an MVP. So, there's been talk about whether or not he should be in the Hall of Fame. Those who argue he should talk about his 2 Super Bowl victories and an MVP. And he's 8-2 in the playoffs, which is great. However, other people argue he should not be in the Hall of Fame because his stats weren't that great. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns, and his overall record is 72-72. So anyway, not a Hall of Famer. This guy I included because why wouldn't I? His name is Coy Bacon. That just sounds cool. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler, though. That's pretty great. The researchers also looked into it and believed that he had 130 quarterback sacks. So that's pretty great. Unfortunately, he passed away back in 2008, but it looks like he had quite a great career. This guy right here, speaking of great careers, Cliff Harris, Hall of Fame this year, 2020. He played in 5 Super Bowls in 10 years in his career. He also made 6 consecutive Pro Bowls, so that's a pretty great one. This guy right here, Raymond Claiborne, he's a Patriots Hall of Famer, 4-time All-Pro. I believe this is his rookie. Yeah, that's his rookie season. I included him just because, along with being, a Patriots Hall of Famer, which is pretty impressive, he was still around and playing when I started collecting cards. So a lot of these guys were not. In the middle of the set, they all of a sudden added these, championship cards. So the 77 AFC Championships, which the Cowboys won, and then the 77 AFC Championship, which the Broncos won. That looks like it must have been a pretty good game. Followed by the Super Bowl. There's Tony Dorsett as a rookie. Cowboys won that game 27-10. And here we have Archie Manning. As everybody knows, father of Eli and Payton. He was also the 2nd pick of the 1971 draft. 2-time Pro Bowler. And if you look on the back here, it says Archie was drafted as a shortstop by the Chicago White Sox. I did not know that, so that's pretty interesting. Next up, we will have Ray Rhodes, I included him just because, he was a head coach in the NFL. He played from 74 to 80, and then he was a head coach for the Eagles, and I think he coached the Packers briefly as well. Then here we have Willie Buchanan. The reason I included him is I thought this was kind of funny. On the back of the card, for his note, it says, Willie is one of the Packers' more flamboyant dressers. I just thought that was kind of funny. So imagine what they think of Cam Newton these days. All right, so right here we have Ken Anderson, a great quarterback for the Bengals, 4-time Pro Bowler, NFL MVP in 1981. He was also the Man of the Year in 1975. I included this guy because, his is an interesting story. This is Larry Gordon. He was a first-round pick in 76 by the Dolphins, and he started every game from day one of his rookie season until he passed away. Unfortunately, he died in the summer of 1983 while jogging, had a heart attack, but he did make this Dolphins silver anniversary team. So a great career cut way too short. Now we have here, this is Sam Adams. The reason I included him was because on the back of the card, I just thought this was the most bizarre comment of any of these. Sam's lucky charm is a can of sardines. That just made me laugh. So anyway, now we know, Sam Adams. All right, next up is Thomas Hollywood Henderson. This is his rookie card, I believe. I don't think they made very many cards of him. So he was a Pro Bowler a year later. Well, actually, the year this card came out, 78. Super Bowl champion that year. This season with the Cowboys. And what's interesting is he has a very interesting life. He had a book come out that I read when I was in middle school, and I really shouldn't have read it because it was quite graphic. It goes into detail about his rise to fame, being the Thomas Hollywood Henderson, but then getting involved heavily in drugs and alcohol and how it completely derailed his career, but also his fight to regain his sobriety. Honestly, it's an interesting read, but probably not for a 13-year-old to be reading. Anyway, it's a very interesting life. He won the lottery after, years after he retired. He won the lotto for a $28 million jackpot. And I read that when they asked him what he does, his quote was, "Not a damn thing, and I don't start that until after lunch." So that's pretty great. Lawrence Taylor even said he was inspired to wear number 56 because of Hollywood Henderson. Next up on the list, we have John Riggins. John Riggins, Hall of Fame running back in 92, had a great Super Bowl with the Redskins, that epic run. Here we have Fred Dean, rookie card. So Fred Dean, Chargers, also a 49er, 4-time Pro Bowler, and he made the Hall of Fame in 2008. Right here we have Gary Huff. This is that guy who led the Buccaneers to their first win. He had been on the Bears the year before, signed with the Buccaneers, and led them to that first win. So if you ever get a trivia question of who led the Buccaneers to their first win, there you have it. Right here is Darryl Stingley. So I've mentioned him before. He's the player who became a quadriplegic after getting hit during a Raiders preseason game. So that happened in the preseason of 1978. So this here was Darryl Stingley's final card before that accident. This player right here, as a Bears fan, is especially interesting. But Doug Plank. Okay, so he had an 8-year career. He was one of defensive coordinator Buddy Ryan's favorite players. Buddy loved how aggressive he was, his hitting style, his approach to the game. So he became a favorite of Buddy Ryan's. So Buddy Ryan named the 4-6 defense after Doug Plank, after his jersey. That 4-6 defense was a huge part of the Bears' Super Bowl run back in '85, and that dominant Hall of Fame defense. That 4-6 defense, that's what it's named after right there, Doug Plank. Next up, this is the rookie card of Reggie Williams. I mentioned him at the beginning of the video, but he was had a long time career with the Bengals. Next up, we have Jan Stenrud, first pure kicker into the Hall of Fame back in '91. This is Tom Jackson, rookie card. He was part of the Orange Crush defense, 3-time All-Pro. This guy right here, Steve ODOM, went to the University of Utah. Still holds 4 Packer records: most kick return yards, most kick returns, most total return yards, and longest punt return for a touchdown, 95 yards against my Bears. Ray Guy, Hall of Fame punter. Jack Youngblood, Hall of Fame of 2001, 7-time Pro Bowl. This guy right here, Bill Lankaitis. What was interesting is, check this out. Bill is the Patriots' official dentist. How crazy is that? So their own player was their dentist. This is Dave Logan. This guy right here was the voice of the Broncos for 4 decades. On the back of the card, I thought this was pretty cool. Dave was drafted by the Browns in football, as well as the Reds in baseball and the Kings in basketball. So definitely a good athlete there. Joe Clacco, rookie card. 4-time Pro Bowler, part of the New York Sack Exchange. Roger Staubach, obviously one of the greats. First to win the Heisman and Super Bowl MVP. It's been done since, but not before. Mean Joe Greene, 10-time Pro Bowler, Hall of Fame. Dan Deerdorf, again, Hall of Fame back in '96, and a lot of people know him from Monday Night Football. Leroy Selman, first pick overall by the Buccaneers of their franchise, made the Hall of Fame in '95. Again, Tony Dorsett, rookie. That's my original one that I pulled. This one's a little better shape. John Stallworth, Hall of Fame. We also have Larry Little. Wesley Walker, who was one of the best. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler, part of the Jets Ring of Honor. Then we have some of these leader cards. Passing leaders. We've got receiving leaders. I'll just show you a few Hall of Famers here. There we go. Now, what's really interesting to me is I thought that Jim Marshall was in the Hall of Fame, and I've come to find out that he was not in the Hall of Fame. So he had 271 consecutive starts, holds the NFL record for the most fumbles recovered at 30. His jersey number is retired, but he is not in the Hall of Fame. Charlie Sanders, Hall of Fame. Drew Pearson, just one of the excellent Cowboy receivers. Hall of Famer Mike Webster. Pat McKinley, 2 interesting things. He went to Harvard. What's interesting was that he was the first, and I think only person who's scored an official perfect score on the Wonderlic, and also invented starting lineup. Stanley Morgan, Ken Stabler, Paul Krause, Mike Haynes. We've got Harry Carson. And actually, here is O.J. Simpson's card for the Niners. We have that one there. Herm Edwards, popular coach. He played to win the game. Alan Page, Bolitnikoff, Emmett Thomas. You know, a lot of these Hall of Famers. Now, this guy, John Matuzak, he played Sloth on Goonies. Kind of cool to have his card. Steve Largent, one of the all-time greats. You got Jack Ham, Mitch Tingelhoff. John Capoletti was a Heisman Trophy winner. Didn't do much in the NFL, but still of note. Art Shell, Mel Blount, Eddie Payton. That's Walter's big brother. There's our Gary Fensick rookie. Dan Fouts, Franco Harris. And then a couple local guys. We have Marv Bateman of Utah and Jim Turner of Utah State. Anyway, those are my cards for this show and tell. If you guys like the videos, I'll be doing some pack openings as well as some of these. So feel free to like and subscribe. And everybody have a great day. Thanks so much.